Hey, friends and fans and other people who come across this. I recall once when I was a kid, small kid, probably 12 or so, realizing that not a day had gone by in as long as I could remember that I did not cry privately in my own room. My life in school was hell. First of all, I was always what you'd call ADHD, so absolutely incapable of functioning in the society that we had, particularly the school society that we had. Plus, I had to get hundreds on every test for my mother. Yeah, a lot of pressure. And I was totally unable to sit still or focus for a second in school. And in Jew school, school went from like 8 in the morning until 7 at night. It was terrible. Plus lots of homework afterwards. To add to that, my parents' marriage was violently horrible. My home life was absolutely terrible. I was put to bed every night very, very early. Literally just like 2, 3 hours after getting home. Less. Even in 8th grade, I was still being put to sleep in the eights before 9. In 8th grade. I would just lie there for hours. In addition to that, the primary belief of my mother, who, well, I don't want to talk about, the person who, anyways, the person who I guess you could call my mother is alive, and I'm not talking about that person who's alive today. I'm just discussing the person who imprinted upon me as a child. Her parents suffered in the Holocaust in the worst ways anyone could ever possibly suffer. Whole families murdered, Auschwitz and slavery and the whole thing. Like, like worse than anything you could imagine. They were only able to get through it through imagining how wonderful it would be to have a child, and they raised her with this. Of course, my grandfather had a stroke when my mother was small, and my mother's parents would constantly curse each other out. I saw it already even in my day. Never mind while my mother was younger, they would beat each. It was just horrible. My grandfather was half paralyzed from a stroke, and already when he was ancient, in his 80s or something, I walked in with him after Yom Kippur, after he fasted for like 26 hours, and walked into the house, and immediately his wife punched him. I mean, anyways, my mother grew up in total hell. And the way she was able to explain to herself how, a loving, true God was the essence of her world. She believed in God more than she believed in anything else in this world. How we could do evil is because, suffering in this world is good. And she raised me to believe that suffering was good. It's important to suffer. On the other hand, if things go well for you in this life, it's a sign that God doesn't love you. I don't know how far she took that belief in her own life, but that's definitely the lesson that I got from her. In any case, at one time I decided that no, suffering is not good. I'm going to let that go. And as I see America officially become just going in the direction of how I was raised, of believing in, everything is about what kind of victim are you. Focus on your victimhood. Anyhow, so I've always tried to do the opposite, certainly publicly. Not interested in getting points or benefits for suffering. It's far, far worse to be an unhappy billionaire than to be a happy homeless person. That's obvious. Not that the two are whatever. All I'm saying is the ultimate thing that matters is happiness. Everything is going towards that. In any case, so I refuse to sacralize suffering. I refuse to make suffering sacred, to make it a good, to make it worthy. That's why it's very hard to talk about what they call ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. The most insulting term you can imagine, and one that's like, I get it. It's like assuaging, hey, it's not your fault, which it's not. It's a physical thing. It's a literal, physical, different brain that is not changeable. It is not changeable by having a different worldview or therapy or any. It is not changeable by medication. It is, so to speak, manageable, how they try to say. In other words, won't be as bad. But anyways, but it's difficult to talk about for the whole. I'm not interested in this culture of calling it that. I saw a book once that was called something like Hunters in a Farmer's World, which was a good analogy, but I'm not going to go into explaining it right now because I'm not feeling it. I want to say that, the correct term is incapable of being disingenuous. That's really ADHD. Incapable of being disingenuous. Unable to be not genuine. You have to, you're unable to do things, to do steps along the way. And nowadays, of course, because, we serve victimhood, lots of people who do not have the severe ADHD that I have, but who, like all human beings, aren't 100% executive function. They're not robots. Everyone is slightly ADHD, so to speak. It really comes down, because ADHD people are not really, severe ADHD people. I'm using that term because that is the fucking term that's used in this world. It's like, I don't know what the numbers are. 1 in 10,000 at my level, at my level. See how much I hate it? I don't hate my personality type. Just my personality type does not fit the rules and laws of this world, the way that it functions, the way that people get any level of security or monetary or money or anything like that. Yeah, so because there's a lot of fakes, obviously it decreases the amount of understanding. I'm not asking for sympathy. Really just understanding. That's it. From people who care about me. They don't even have to understand the details, just believe me. I'm not, it's not a tactic. It's not an excuse. It's not learned helplessness that I'm forcing upon myself. It's not a belief system that gives me an excuse that there, it's, but it's so cruel. It's so insanely cruel. My whole life I've been saying this. Long before I'd ever heard of anything like ADD. I understood I'm just using that term so that people know to some degree, but it doesn't help. They don't believe. Because they know how people, our whole culture is encouraging you to find your weaknesses and celebrate them and make them shiny and put them up on your fucking mantelpiece and define yourself by it. Fuck you. Not you who's watching this, but the world that says that. Fuck them. And fuck the part of you that feels that too. Don't feel that. Whatever, do what you want. But people don't get. I get. I am as dan lekav zchus, as it's a Jewish term, it means judging people favorably, as much as possible. I used to go around explaining to people that, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, when I say going around explaining to people, I mean, I'm not a shy person. I've created, big programs. I've done big things in this world. I mean, not huge, but, within circles that I was able to reach. And I used to go around preaching how, any level of, disliking, even a violent person, because people don't want to be violent. Now, I get that I've grown up a little bit more since then. I've realized that, A, there could be actually evil people who are just born a certain way, and there's nothing you can do about it. And also that a lot of people, pretty much everybody, to some degree, feels like they're justified in the things that they do that hurt other people. They don't even, because they've been hurt too, and whatever, and just how the system runs. And at the end of the day, those that say turn the other cheek, and those that say pray for your enemies, and if someone, asks for your coat, give them your jacket too, they always end up crucified. They don't live. If you're not, you were given two fists for a reason, so that people, even if you never use them, so that people know that you have them, that there's a limit to how far they can push you before you'll use your fists. Every human being has two fists. People who publicly renounce, as I often have, that will, but I've stopped that years ago. I let people know that, yeah, there is a limit. But, yeah, people who renounce it, who renounce violence completely, they always end up dead. Before their time, murdered. Not just that decent, but I know from, doesn't matter. I'm not going to go into that. My own special goodness and why you should care. Great. I'm as sincere as I can be in myself, and I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that. But when people who care about me are saying, like, hey, why don't you just do this? Just because they can see it, they don't get that I can't do it. They don't get that for me, for what I is. It's living in the moment is all I can do. As soon as, to brush my teeth and shave and shower and get dressed, whatever, because it's something I really want to do afterwards, or more often these days, should do, really, should do. They don't get that, whereas to you, it's like your mind is able to be on that thing. For me, my mind cannot be on that thing. My mind does not believe in the future. My emotions, my whole hormonal system doesn't believe in the future. It doesn't believe what it can't see. So the whole shaving and showering, it just seems completely meaningless. It's avodas perech. It's labor that has no purpose. So far as I feel in my soul, in my mind, in my spirit, in my physical, chemical stuff that goes on in my brain, that's how, that's the motivating factor for humanity. It doesn't work. It doesn't do. So when it's something like, hey, call this guy and say this and it'll work out, to do something. I don't know how to do it. I do it wrong. All I can do is be in the moment. If I'm living in the moment without focusing on the goal, I'm losing sight of it. It's not a possibility. I'm not asking for anything except a little bit of understanding. Except you get how much it hurts me if you tell me, if you blame. Fuck, it's like people who have cared about me. Say, hey, write this guy, whatever. And I put so much fucking effort into. I'm thinking of a specific example. And I sent a copy of a friend of mine to the guy who recommended that I write somebody about something, an email, and he wrote back to me, why can't you just be fucking normal? Apparently, it was supposed to be just like a one-sentence email, and it ended up being about 5 pages. I gave him the complete picture. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. What, do you think I didn't try? What I used to say, I was back to the violent people point that I mentioned before. I used to point out to people, don't you get it? They don't want it themselves, Realize that it's not against you. The person's not slapping you. Not that there were a lot of examples that I knew. We're talking about when I was 18 years old that I spread this belief pretty far and wide, which was good, of understanding it's not that the other person is, that they want to be mean and, they don't want to. I don't want to praise myself, so I won't. Let me just say that, I can tell it for myself, and I really think for pretty much everybody, we enjoy being nice. It is better to give than to receive. It is better to give than not to give. Not in all circumstances, etc., etc., etc. But it feels good to give. It feels good to make people happy. For everybody. I know this, again, great. I'm a holy, holy saint, okay? We got it out of the way. I'm a great man. Or at least I would be if I were capable because I had any level of finances or any other, whatever the fuck, okay? Great. Can we, that's another thing, I guess, but that's, that inability to allow people to give me acclaim is something which is very negative, that I received very strongly from my youth. That's not something I support, really. In other words, yeah. I don't know how to praise myself without being fake, because it just seems so fake. I can't really do it, but I think that, letting people know, not letting people know your good sides, but being okay with them knowing your bad sides, or thinking negatively when the truth is positive, that's a fucked up thing. Anyways, but whatever. My point is just the ADHD thing. Don't people fucking get it? Don't people fucking get it? don't you get how stupid it is? Someone like, but why don't you, but you don't want to end up homeless in a week, so why don't you go and get a job and get some, fuck, don't you get it? Who the fuck, what kind of, who wants to suffer? Nobody, I don't know, I can't speak. Some people really do have I don't have the philosophy of suffering. I don't have the philosophy of suffering. I have the philosophy that getting the most out of life and happiness and all the rest is good. That's my fucking philosophy. So if you see that I'm not getting something, then it's almost certainly because I'm unable fucking to. And just kicking me in the ribs and telling me that I should doesn't help. There's no point to this recording. I'm done. Yeah, for the sake of the stupidity that I was raised with, I gotta point this out. Like, I mean everything I said, but, you know, I was raised with a fucking crazy mother. I was straight out of Auschwitz. You have to understand that, like, because of her parents' unique, terrible situation and her father having a stroke and whatever else, she's not like a normal Dor Sheni, which means second generation from Holocaust. She's very much like a Dor Rishon, an Av HaTuma. She's a great person, but yeah, she herself is like someone crawled out of the ashes. Yeah, and literally, not theoretically, this is what she and my father both believe, that it was impossible for them to have children. My mother cried, and it was life. The whole reason she got married, she told me, the whole reason that she got married and was to have a child so she would finally have a friend. So there was a lot of pressure put upon me, and then my parents couldn't have children. It was only through a miracle of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whatever. They believed that a certain rabbi, you know, told them that by next year your parents would be babysitters, and I was born within the year, and it was only the doctors said, hey, your wife cheated on you, you should go kill the guy who she slept with. But in fact, I look like my father, so we know that it's whatever. It's true. I am my father's son. It's not really a question. But it also, I don't think it was. I think whatever. It doesn't matter. But this is their belief, 100%. That, you know, and so there was a lot invested fucking in me by my fucking mother. So it had a huge effect. So with her, one always had to be very, very, very careful because everything was on the edge of death. Death was always right ahead of us. Suicide was always right ahead of us. To this day, I'm afraid because that my mother will kill herself because of X, Y, or Z. For me, that I'm, you know, it was just, I'm not saying that it's her to blame or whatever the fuck, but I'm just saying, like, you know, so I gotta focus right now. This is not me. I'm anti all of that, right? So in other words, even if I put up a video and I'm fucking crying and saying it's hopeless and helpless, I'm still not gonna commit suicide. And the reason I mention that is not because I don't want help. I could use some care at least. I could use at least someone who could be a sounding board so that I can talk something out, you know, without judgment, without interruption. I could use that. But my mother's help was always terrible. It was always incredibly invasive and intrusive and calling everybody I knew behind my back, not allowing me any independence. It was just the worst fucking thing. So I always have to, like, I'm not, you know, I'm fine, not guilt, right? You know, so like, leave me the fuck alone. Because, you know, if you're gonna be offering to help, that's great, but, you know, it's, usually it really just makes fucking things worse, my fucking mother. Again, not the individual alive today. The individual alive today, there's no reason to talk. I don't hold grudges or whatever the hell else. I'm just discussing so you understand the situation that I came from, for those who give a shit, whatever, but that's it. So I'm fine, but I'm not fine, you know. I have, for one, I have, it sounds crass to talk about money, but I don't talk about it very often, so at the end of the day, shit. Yeah, I'm unable to talk about money. Security, some small, tiny level of security would be useful. But just, yeah, I have serious dental issues, and I can't really mention that without mentioning how unfair it is, you know. At the age of 18, I went around door to door collecting money for somebody to get him dental implants. And at times, you know, every once in a while where someone like looked at me like I was faking or lying, which was very infrequent, but I was completely 100% doing it for the sake of, it wasn't a penny that I was putting, I was giving my money. There wasn't any, it was no benefit to me except that that was the only way that I was able to feel good was to help other people, whatever. The only way that my conscience allowed. That wasn't why I was doing it. As a matter of fact, it really bothered me that I would get any pleasure out of helping someone else. The level of selflessness required was sickening. But that still, unfortunately, exists. I need to I need to destroy from my head. I don't know how. But yeah, for me to be in situations like that, and it's just so fucked up. That's what, it's just worse than that. I've rescued a person who was going to be killed from. Everybody was given the chance to rescue him. A man who was kidnapped and being tortured was going to be killed on Hitler's birthday. Everybody was given the chance. I was like some divine prosecutor at the end of the day. I wasn't a prosecutor. I was just trying to get people to save him. And by people, I mean, like, the chief rabbis of Israel, and Rav Elyashiv and Rav Scheinberg and Rav Weinberg, and the head of the FBI kidnapping unit in the States, and just some billionaires and all kinds of people. They wouldn't do it, and I had no ability. I was always ADHD. Yeah. And then I ended up in a cell through no fault of my own, through someone else taking complete advantage of me, through cruelty, in exchange for my goodness. My point, I think, was that, yeah, well, I've never, ever had myself more money than money that I gave and also raised for other people. Never had any security. People are such dicks. Why don't you get married? Such dicks. Why don't you have kids? Such dicks. So with them, I fall back on explaining usually that, looking around the world, it doesn't seem like in other words, if you're telling me just do it because you should, because it's like obvious that you should. Well, unlike, having enough money in the bank account that you're not going to be homeless in a couple of days or the next day or whatever the hell. That, I think, is pretty obvious. It's useful. But just to get married and have just because you suppose you have to. So for them, I say I look around the world and I don't see that most people are successful. Most people who follow that belief, they're not really. It's not happy for them. I don't see that I would necessarily be happy in their shoes anyway. But of course, like nobody goes into it for the sake of failing. Everybody goes into it for the sake of having the best thing possible. They marry the person that they feel like marrying. They raise the kids the way they feel, And the truth is that at this age, I really would do those things well. At this age, I'm not an idiot, and I'm not naive, and I'm not falling, The answer simply is that, my God, I can't even get a regular. I had to go to these scam people who messed up my mouth in a really, really bad way, and I'm in a lot of pain. Don't like to say that. Okay. Yeah, because I don't have money. Yeah, like I said, there's no reason to post this, but I'm going to, otherwise I guess, because, this was necessary for me anyway, to say, to feel, to be able to express. So I guess I'm going to post it because otherwise I won't. And I won't be able to do this again, I guess. I don't fucking know. Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know how to handle my own fucking head because I received so many. My parents are divorced. They hate each other, violently hate each other, their whole fucking lives. From the day my father told me, from the day he got married. From literally that day that he got married. In that world, you don't really, yeah, people get married pretty young and you hardly know your spouse before you get married to them and whatever else. Yeah, so from literally his marriage day. My parents hate each other. And of course, you realize that, like, every individual is a blend of their parents. So essentially, I grew up with each of my parents hating half of me and considering the other person to be the devil. My parents were each raised with parents who saw the world that way too. Yeah, that's why, like, just now I said, like, I have, enough confidence in myself. If I had enough money, it would be fine. My marriages and family, whatever. I'm not saying I don't even have like the craziest of highest hopes and whatever else. I have a very reasonable understanding of it would be nice. That's all. That's what I'm telling you. But if I were to do it as a kid, I don't think so, because I probably would have fallen into the same thing. But after a lifetime of observing people from very up close, I think I have some level of understanding. It was a shit sandwich, my friends. It remains one to some degree, but I discovered that there's no benefit to suffering, so I just accept the limitations, imposed upon me by reality, and enjoy my life to the best that I can. And I do a damn fine job of that. But in addition to, here's the thing, really, in addition to the pressures that arise, not just for wanting something more, like the knowledge that you won't be homeless in a week because you have enough money that you don't have to worry about it, or you own a house or are renting a house or whatever the hell, I mean, but just simply being able to fucking deal with horrible pain in your mouth, to be able to, in addition to just the simple needs, there's also, but the needs are limited. I'm able to deal even emotionally if need be. I have a lot of control. I have control over everything a person can control, or at least at some point in my life I have had control over every single thing that a person can control. And I know that for a fact. Because whatever, I conquered the greatest, literally the other than someone who was suffocating for lack of oxygen, who's held underwater, who's able to breathe. Other than that, the strongest urge that exists is an interest in sex in a young man. And for me, at the literal height of my libido, and I had a stronger libido than anybody else that I knew, stronger drive. Libido sounds completely sexual, but it's a drive which was made for reproduction. That's what nature intended it for a man to try to reproduce as much as possible. That's how evolution works. So it fits bestly there, but it also applies to all the other aspects. Libido is, what makes people achieve things, large things, so that in theory they'll be able to have, pass on their genes quite a bit. So it's a complicated thing, but anyway, the point is that drive, I completely and totally erased at that age my sexual drive. I tried to get some of it back since then, but for a while, and I did it for the sake of other people. I did it for the sake because I believe it was wrong to have any kind of me-ness. I should just be helping other people. All my joy should only come from that. Anyway, whatever. Overly religious, fucked up, overly good, fucked up stuff. It doesn't fit this world, kind of thing. But yeah, it's the control I got. But my point here is that happiness and enjoying and everything that comes, it's from Ecclesiastes, Koheles, in the Bible. That yeah, just enjoy everything. Life is great, and you just focus on the positive and all the rest. I live like that. Like I said, when higia mayim ad nofesh, when it comes to life or death or near life or death situations, yeah, at that moment there's a desperation. It's like drowning in the sea, flail, or whatever the fuck, just to survive. But in addition, I risk losing friends. I think that's really my point, my frustration, my primary thing that I'm saying now. People who people who earn hundreds of dollars a day at their job, people who are friends, who would be, I risk losing friends, and I'm not asking anyone for anything, but I'm saying people are like, why should we care about your difficulties when you're not doing the things that you could do and that I do and that I tell you to do? So I should state that I have been trying my whole life, but every once in a while I recognize this is just all I'm doing is killing my day today. In other words, today I'm alive, and I have a choice today to keep banging my head against the wall to try to get through and to do something correct and proper that will help me tomorrow. And most of the time I just end up with a concussion. Most of the time it just really makes things worse. It makes things worse. Forget about it doesn't help. It makes things worse. But worst of all, I'm losing that day. That day is never coming back, and it was spent as a frozen creature attempting, trying so hard and blaming himself and trying to figure out a way and reading and thinking and talking to people and trying this and that, just incapable, literal incapable. To give the slight, just to tell you, just so you understand what I'm talking about. So, as you probably know, I'm a rabbi and I studied for rabbinic ordination. You have to know a lot before you enter the program, and the program is 2 years, and it's very, very in-depth, yada yada, very, very hard stuff, ultra-orthodox rabbinic ordination. And it's a 2-year program of study just on this subject, from literally early morning until literally late at night. It's all that people did. The other people in class, it's literally all they did other than eat and pray. That's it. All I did for 2 years. And I wanted to be up with the class. I didn't want to have to, cram at the end. And I would literally open the books, the Jewish Hebrew books, the ancient texts, and could not understand any 2 words put together. It was as if I was looking at an ancient code. I could not read them. I could not pronounce them correctly. I couldn't. I tried, and it was so painful to keep trying to do things you can't do. Like someone who has no legs, who is told by everyone that he's a great runner and should just fucking run. Just run. What's your problem? Just run. But they can't see it because it's literally a different brain. I have a different fucking brain. So I would sit there and I would just try and try and try. Anyway, happily, I would give myself breaks, as I still do, and say, okay, for the next few days, I'm not even going to try. And I would go out and have extraordinary, amazing life, meeting amazing people, have just great stuff, undeniably great and fascinating stuff that I could tell you and sometimes even do. But yeah, it felt, the whole world is like, you're nuts. You're going to fail. You're wasting your life. Anyway, so I guess this is the part I ought to be proud about. I memorized the entire 2 years worth and got the second highest score in the class. Probably would have gotten the highest score, except the person grading actually told me. He said, I was sure you didn't know anything. He actually graded me, it doesn't matter. Second highest is fine too. But I'm saying it's quite likely that I actually deserved highest. I actually knew it the best in the class, and he was just biased, very strongly biased. He said, not against me as a person, but against the possibility that I knew anything, because he never saw me in the room. And yet I was always discussing with him all kinds of other fascinating things. He knew that I was spending my time learning other things that were interesting. Anyways, so yeah, I memorized everything in 2 weeks. Because then I was able to. Because it was, I don't know, it just happens. It's how it is. It's Higia Mayim Ad Nafesh. It's flailing around. It's the end of days, Anyway, but the thing is, the losing a friend's part, the thing about like people, I'm not just having some sympathy, not even empathy, just people are like, why should we care? Here you are out enjoying life. You think I wouldn't like to be out there enjoying life? So A, if you think you should be doing something other than working, okay, go do it. I'm not telling you, but really, you don't get it. You're at least capable. The thing that you're doing is actually accomplishing stuff. I get it. My free life seems great, but okay, and it is great, except that it is missing the knowledge that I have a net, the knowledge that I'm not going to die tomorrow. It is missing that. There's a benefit to having that net. And if you're working and have some kind of stability, you have that. Okay? So don't be jealous, please. People do get jealous. They even they get angry and hate me for being happy because they believe that you have to do the things that they end up doing to be happy. And they see that I'm happy without it, and it bothers them. Or they see that I'm good also religiously, People who believe that you have to believe in X, Y, or Z and do X, Y, and Z to be a good person, a good humanistic person. They see me being humanistic without believing any of those things, and they hate me for it. But that's a separate point. I'm talking about friends right now. Friends, fans, whatever. Friends. That's what bothers me. That's why I'm talking, I think. I don't want to, to lose the normal human sympathy. Like, I would have sympathy for you. I do have sympathy for you with the difficulties that you have. Just because it's not necessarily great in life to be more understanding than other people to them as they are to you. But what can I do? I understand. I forgive. I get it, I know that people are different. I know that people have their difficulties that you can't necessarily see. I know, it's not hard to be understanding for me. And that's all that I want, the belief. Anyway, I got to stop this now because it's shameful. That's why. Because it feels shameful. It feels shameful. It feels like I'm surrendering to the Weltanschauung, the current worldview, the current moral, ethical worldview that suffering is some kind of ideal. You know who ends up taking advantage of it, but fuck it. I'm not going to try to change the world right now. That's not the thing. But in short, to answer the question, fakers, they take advantage of it. Bad folk who are not really the ones suffering. You want to know who's suffering? Look around. Whatever. I have advice to give on that matter, on moral stuff, but I couldn't give it without sharing honestly what a good guy I am and have always been. And I don't know. I don't know how to do it anyway. So I'm not interested, okay. But that's it. That's it. So here's the deal right now. Sorry, I'm trying to talk to myself, figure out, because I also try to push myself to work, but at the same time, if there's no light at the end of the tunnel, there's no freedom of just enjoying existence as it is. There's no point. It's katzli b'chayi. What's the point of existing? Anyway, but enough. I guess for myself, I'm just going to say right now this, and you can hear it because I'm still talking. So I'm going to post this as it is, not edited in any way. I don't know why I'm posting it, except that if you're a friend, I may as well be talking to you, so okay, let's assume that. I should probably tell you, as I mentioned in the past, ways that theoretically you could send me money if you wanted to, but I'm not asking to, whatever, but I'm not going to do that because I'm sorry. I don't know, I'm sorry to myself. I'm not going to do it. No apologies to you. It means you don't have to worry about it, but sorry for mentioning it. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm not really sorry for mentioning it because, but I'm going to post this, and then for 40 minutes, I'm going to try to do productive things and hope that it doesn't get counterproductive. For example, I'm going to call some guy who's certainly out of the office already, but I called yesterday. I'm going to check messages. Maybe he got back to me regarding dentist. I'm going to see, well, there's a friend of mine who's in town who I'd like to see again. But what I was going to say now is that basically, 40 minutes I'm going to be allowed to do some productive stuff, and only 40. And then after that, for 5 hours, I'm not allowed to, and it's just enjoying life. Not allowed to do anything I don't feel like, and just in praising the existence that I have. It's beautiful. I don't know what to tell you. Life is great. If you're not enslaved to the false demands put upon you by things external to you, by the superego, by the Welt, by the world, by things you've read, by things you think, by beliefs you came to at some point in your life, such as the necessity of having or doing X, Y, or Z, and then even when it doesn't apply, and even if you were wrong when you came to that conclusion, you still continue to do it, whatever. But if you're free, and I've managed to get myself pretty darn free, I guess life was good to me in disallowing me the usual paths of success. So I was able to find this, and that's why I think I'm way ahead and better off for anything that I do right now than I would be if I had success when I was younger. So I'm pleased about it, but yeah, it's difficult to do because, like I said, because I want to call my friend, but then I wouldn't have those 5 hours afterwards of freedom because, well, I could, but the problem is that 5 hours doesn't work. When it comes to meeting people, because there's a future. So if you're completely free, you might accidentally say or do something that could be very, very harmful for the future for yourself. So, you have to keep in mind all the whatever's. I know I sound like a retard, you can't get what I'm saying, but there's an autism to me as well. There's an autistic aspect, which it's worth mentioning. I grew up in a boys' school. I grew up in a retardedly segregated by sex world, and no sisters either. And my mother and grandmothers were horrible lunatics, so there wasn't much. But yeah, boys in general, are generally more autistic than women on the spectrum, let's say, so to speak. Let's say that everybody is somewhere on this, right? Some level of not comprehending instantly all the social cues, knowing exactly, feeling holistically, being correct in your emotions, matching the reality and whatever else, not having to think through from first principles to know that you exist, cogito ergo sum. Only a man will come up with cogito ergo sum to explain how he knows that anything in the world exists, right? Women are much more normal than that. They're aware that they exist. They don't have to write books about it. But I grew up in a world that was just boys. In addition, it was descended from a world back to ancient times, back through all times, and in New York too. So the way that we talked to each other was in the school, in the religious school, about religious texts, was to shout at each other, and it's considered normal. It's fine. So the world that I come, and also everything is so technical and not matching to reality in any way, shape, or form. All the things that we studied, the point is to uproot every aspect of understanding of the normal world that you have as a normal human being on this earth, and to remake it. Whatever, but leaving aside that system and whatever it's good or bad, there's some also genetic from my mother, certainly, but it's also definitely bred in from all of society, some autism, and therefore having to think things through and make a contract in my head about X, Y, or Z. But enough about me. At this point, it's just, that's it. I'm just going to make that decision. Does that mean I'm not going to call him? I don't know the answer to that. And it's unfair to keep you on. I have to decide something. I'm going to post this right now. If nothing else, it shows, the difficulty that I have in when I try to actually do something. That's why I discovered not to try. This doesn't work for me. I'm not saying other people shouldn't do it. I'm so helpful to other people. My God, I encourage people to look into religions that I myself don't believe in. I don't lie to them and say that I do believe in them. But I point out the positive aspects of it and say, hey, and of course it could be right, because anything could be right. That's the benefit of being autistic. Anything's possible. Who knows, right? So at least I have that covered as a possibility. But I encourage for their sake. I'm not preaching that what's worse for me is what works for everyone. I have such a level of understanding that it's so unfortunate that I don't have the right presentation for the world, for the sake of the fucking world, not for my sake. I think I would only do it if it benefited me too, I hope. But for the sake of the world, it's so unfortunate that I have no platform. It really fucking is for the sake of humanity. But fuck that. That sounds like I'm aggrandizing myself, so screw that. Yeah, so I don't know what to do about whether I'm going to be allowed to call this guy or not. I guess not, unless it's what I feel. Sorry, I don't know the answer to myself. Now you see what I have to put up with. But I'm going to post this, and then I'm allowed for 30 minutes thereafter to do some things that might or might not be productive, but purposeful things. And then for 4 hours thereafterwards, no purposeful things, except trying to solve problems here, writing a good contract for myself, not allowed to use the internet, so I don't fall back on that. Have to be outdoors, to try to put myself at least in scenarios where I'm much more likely to. I don't know how to solve this, my friends, because I'm not like you. I'm not able to. It doesn't work. I'm using all the techniques because in my own life, my father is somewhat ADHD, and it would have been great if he would have raised me, but he wasn't allowed to because my mother was much more powerful, as is often the case in humans, but certainly in Jewish humans, and certainly in my situation. So I was raised by someone completely different to me in mentally, who was also a nut job, and yeah, it was very, very difficult. Okay. So the deal is, I'm going to post this immediately. See, if I don't prepare it, it's an ADHD thing, I think. And the reason I mention ADHD is, like I said, first of all, just more likely to believe me because you've heard of it, but not really, because most people lie or think that they have some issues because they're different than me. Please don't take my words like you take their words. I'm separate, But also you can look it up if you're interested and get some pretty good idea, because it maps on, not perfectly, but somewhat well to what I'm talking about. So you have to take it as the severe. But I'm going to post this right away, and then for 35 or 30 minutes I'm going to attempt to get good stuff done, and then for 3 hours I'm just existing in now and enjoying everything that I have up until this point. I'll make a bracha shechayanu v'kimanu v'genu lazman hazeh up until the next 3 hours approximately, or 3.5 hours, and that's it. And I'll just be able during that time to be the guy who's enjoying this glorious world without banging his head against the wall to do things that he can't do. I'm not saying that I'm gonna, just eat ice cream nonstop. I could be doing things that end up being productive, but in fact, I'm much more likely to if I do them out of freedom than if I do them out of fear, if I do them from desire, if I do them because I don't have to. That's it. If you watch all the way through, I really appreciate it, for the record. I kind of felt like most of the last few minutes of it, or the last 10 minutes of it, was very, just me thinking out for myself. But you got to observe something. Maybe it gave you a little bit more sympathy. Maybe you recognized some of it in yourself, but realized it's a lot more severe in this case. But really, thank you if for caring, I guess. If it's morbid curiosity, that's legal, I guess. Yeah, okay. That's it.